Welcome. Welcome, welcome. Give me a second. Let me pull in the chat here. Hit the thumbs up on your way in. And let's see here. I want to see if I can add the chat. Let's see here. Give me a second. Let me just open this up. It's been a busy day. All right. Put this here. Maybe I can have this running as we talk. They finally got me. I'm still here. It's going to take a lot more than... Good to see you all. Welcome. Let's see. Flickoff says George Galloway gave an incredibly alarming warning at the end of his opening monologue. Haven't seen it. I'll have to check it out. Volume's too low. Give me a second. Let me see what I can do. Here, bring that volume up. Hopefully this is a little bit better. If not, let me know and I can increase it some more. I think. Issue with the volume. Just let me know if it improves at all. On this side, it is showing me that the volume's up, but let me see if I can crank it up. Is this any better? Okay, very good. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. I'm using a different camera, and it could be screwing it up. Thank you for Eternal Extrapolation says, hey, hello, Jake. I've shared some of your recent videos on Odyssey. Hope that's okay with you. Sure. All right. So what I'm going to do is walk through a little bit of information about what we're going to be seeing happening next. So one of the things that has everybody all abuzz right now is we're waiting to see what Hezbollah is going to do. And there's a big speech coming up by the Secretary General of Hezbollah. Is a guy named sorry, let me turn off my phone here. Hasan Nasrallah. Let me see if I've got a picture here of him. Maybe I can show you. If I can find one. Let's see here. He's been the head of Hezbollah for some time now. We're going to talk a bit tonight about Hezbollah. So this is him. Knowing YouTube, they'll say that me putting his picture up there is support for a terrorist network, and they'll hit me. We'll see. By the way, before I get much further into this, please take the time, if you are on Rumble at all, follow me on Rumble, because other YouTubers that I've been talking to recently that have been talking about events in Israel, they're starting to really take some heavy fire from YouTube. Basically, what YouTube is doing, what's happening are Israeli trolls, pro-Israel trolls, are going around flagging anything trying to say, aha, see, they are quoting what Hamas said. They're quoting what Hezbollah said. Therefore, they are supporting terrorism. And YouTube is going along with some of this crazy stuff. And so big channels are getting strikes, and it's really, really bad. So with all of the talking that I do about this stuff, as careful as I try to be, um, you know, it's a minefield. Even if you self-censor, they'll come after you. So please follow me on Rumble. I have not been posting a lot there, but I have started posting some. It's Blackstone Intel. Most of my social media stuff is just the Blackstone Intel. So over on Rumble, it's rumble.com/user/Blackstone Intel. And as I get more followers over there, I'll start posting more. But in the meantime, this guy here is the head of Hezbollah. Tomorrow, he's going to be giving a major speech, and everybody is waiting to see, what is this guy going to say? Is he going to be indicating that Hezbollah is going to open up a new front or enlarge the front? They're on the southern border of Lebanon. So we're going to talk about this. If you, Beyond the Veil says, what is Unit 8200? In a nutshell, Unit 8200 is exactly that's part of it. That's the troll army is led by Unit 8200. The IDF, Israel's military, actually has a wing that does nothing but cyber warfare and responding to people like me and the many others who talk about Israeli crimes. And they sit there on their keyboards wearing their military uniforms, and they just sit there, rows of them. There's pictures online. You can see pictures of Unit 8200, and they just sit there and police the internet and go after people. But anyway, so Hezbollah has been hitting Israeli artillery positions up in northern Israel with anti-tank guided missiles. Hezbollah, if you don't know, they were established in the wake of the 1982 Lebanon War. Lebanon was experiencing a lot of civil strife. You had kind of a tripartite, three different factions: Christians, Shias, excuse me. And so you've got this fighting going on. In the midst of it, down in the southern Lebanon, there's very, very large number of Palestinians, because a lot of them were driven out of their lands in 1948. They crossed the border into Lebanon and settled in refugee camps. Anyway, Israel went in. They took advantage of the chaos that was going on when there was civil war going on in Lebanon, primarily between the Muslims and the Christians. But Hezbollah didn't really exist at that point. And Israel went in and they committed just mass slaughter, killed 20,000 people in the process of this fighting. And they claimed they were trying to root out Palestinian terrorists and that kind of stuff. Same old story. Fact is, they were just taking advantage of the existing chaos. But anyway, after this massacre, you have the rise of a new militia that was organized mostly by Lebanese clerics who had studied in Iran. And they followed a model that had been set out by the Ayatollah Khomeini, based on the 1979 revolution. And the name Hezbollah was actually chosen by Khomeini himself. And so that's why they use that name. So Hezbollah is very, very much tied to Iran. They're very closely linked. But this Lebanese group, they had a big war, big fight in 2006 and fought Israel to a stalemate, which was pretty impressive. Um, and Hezbollah has played a huge role in Syria in keeping the Bashar al-Assad in power. So they've been fighting there. They're battle hardened. There's about 100,000 of them at this point. And so they're a force to be reckoned with, and Israel does not want to have to go to toe to toe with these people. They've got good weapons. They've got a lot of experience. They're battle hardened in a way that the soft IDF forces are not. And this is why you see Israel doing everything from a distance that it can. They're only sending in their ground forces in places that have been carpet bombed to the point that there's nothing standing anywhere. Basically, they're going in and kind of like cowards. They don't want to have any actual urban warfare, house to house battles with Hamas. So they reduce an area to rubble, and then they'll move in. And that's also why they're trying to get the civilians out of the north to move down to the south. Is they want to be able to reduce everything down to just ashes. And anyway, Nasrallah is going to give a speech. We're going to see what he has to say. I did a show today talking a little bit about this on Syriana analysis, and I'll put the link in the show notes later on, so you can check out the whole thing. But I'll play for you just a portion of that, about 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and we're going to talk a lot more about this. So let me bring this up, and if you have any trouble with the volume on this video, let me know.
Last question would be, what's the red line, in your opinion, for the opponents of Israel? And if you cross this red line, then there's going to be a regional war, which means the intervention of Hezbollah, probably Iran, probably Syria. Yemen is already firing Scud missiles on Israel now.
My red line, they've already passed. They crossed it. They crossed it as soon as they started massacring the Gazans. So the red line has passed. The problem is that the fallout, the ramifications of all of this is significant. You've got, for example, Hezbollah, and tomorrow we'll see what what Hasan Nasrallah says. I'm very much looking forward to what he's going to say, see if it's going to indicate the direction they're going to go. It appears that Iran has been keeping the brakes on Hezbollah to keep it from spiraling, even though there's been some of these pot shots they've been taking across the border. There's not been the dramatic response that a lot of us would have expected to see. Part of the problem is that right now Iran has got two major fronts. They're using Hezbollah to help keep Bashar al-Assad propped up there in Syria, because if Hezbollah pulls out, if there's another round, if the CIA gets in there, starts agitating again with the Free Syrian Army or whoever, and things really get going again, so you need Hezbollah to help keep things stable there in Syria. You also have got Hezbollah in Lebanon, kind of keeping this I don't want to say peace, but a standstill between them and the Christians and so forth. If you have Hezbollah open up another front, now you're going to probably have Israeli attacks in reprisal on Beirut. You're going to have Lebanon, which is already teetering economically. They're going to get into a big mess there. Hezbollah is going to be entrenched in this fight with the IDF, even though Hezbollah is extremely powerful and could probably beat Israel in a head-to-head match with no other parties joining in. The fact is, even at the end of it, Hezbollah would be severely degraded. they would suffer a lot of casualties, which they're willing to do. And ultimately, even if they beat Israel, the problem is that you've now got a weakened Hezbollah. Lebanon is going to become chaos. You're going to have other factions there in Lebanon trying to supplant the Shia control, Shia dominance. Um, and then you're potentially going to have trouble in Syria flaring up again. That would be the price. If I was running the show, if I was the CIA, that's what I would do, is take advantage of the distraction there and get things going again. So Iran, I think, is wary of things going bad. They don't clearly Hezbollah is the greatest asset that Iran is connected with. Of the 15 proxies that they help to supply support to. So to lose Hezbollah, or at least to have it degraded down to where it's going to take years to build it back up, that would be a problem. So as far as a red line, I think that they, for all the talk, are not going to. I think that all the parties are going to try and keep this from getting worse. And I'm afraid, as pessimistic as this sounds, I watched closely in 2008. I watched closely in 2014, and I kept thinking, this is it. This is it. Hezbollah, Iran, they're finally going to jump in and come. This is finally a red line that's been crossed, and now Israel's going to pay the price. And they didn't. Nobody really got in there and did much. There was a little bit, but nothing significant. And I'm afraid that that's going to be the status quo this time as well, unless Israel ramps up what it's doing. I think that Israel knows, at least based on its pattern in the past, Israel will commit incredible atrocities, but it knows it has a little time period in which it can get away with it before the world mobilizes, before the resolve of the allies of the Palestinians finally say, this is it, we're going to get in. And I think that they're going to milk this as long as they can, but at the point where they think, okay, Hezbollah is now going to get, really turn up the volume, I think Israel's going to back off and kind of pull out of Gaza again. I don't think that Israel's going to keep a, like a year-long campaign going. I think that we're looking at a period of weeks to months before it starts to settle down. And that's why they're bombing as hard as they can now and wiping out the infrastructure as fast as they can, because they know they've got a time limit. Because eventually, even with all of those concerns that I mentioned that Iran and Hezbollah has, the patience will wear out, and they will get involved in dramatically escalating the conflict. And so you've got the USA and other parties working to try and keep things from getting worse. And the thing that drives me crazy about all this is that the ones that are being sacrificed are the Palestinian civilians, primarily in Gaza. They're the ones paying the price. And so I would love to see that all of these parties that have been talking so boldly for so many years about standing up for the Palestinians, I want to see action. I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in war. I don't like it, but I do believe in self-defense, and I do believe coming to the aid of innocent people that are being slaughtered. And if that results in more casualties in the process, people have to take a stand for what's right. You cannot let an aggressor like Israel get away with this over and over again. Because if they get away with it again this time, the way they did in 2008 and 14, and what they did in southern Lebanon back in 82, if they get away with it, it guarantees they're going to do it yet again. So just go all in now and do something.
Last question.
So the problem is this can go either way. Like it could either stay stable, if you want to call what's happening now stability, but it could stay at this level and then gradually go down. That's how it has happened in the past. If history repeats itself, that's what's going to happen. Is Israel's going to keep bombing, grabbing as much as they can, doing just thumbing their noses to the world. But at a certain point, the United States will communicate through back channels. All right, this is starting to be a major problem. You've gone far enough now, and Israel's going to back off. Netanyahu he's been through this numerous times. So you can kind of read him and see what he's going to do. I think that Iran knows this. Hezbollah knows this. Hamas knows this. They've seen all of this in the past. They know the cycle. So many people now are joining in and watching this kind of thing happening. And for those who have not followed it very closely over the years and picked up on this cycle and how it's happening, they tend to think that something huge is getting ready to happen. World War III. And there's potential. There's potential for that. But it is not what the United States wants. It is a major problem for Israel if Iran and its proxies go all in. And so they are doing everything they can. Look at this restraint. Hezbollah has launched some rockets. Israel has responded some, but they're not. It's kind of like if you watch the beginning of a UFC match or something, as they circle around each other, throw a couple jabs to kind of gauge the other side. That's what they're doing. The question is, will Israel take a big shot at Hezbollah? And I don't think they will. Will Hezbollah take a big shot at Israel? The problem for Hezbollah and for Iran is they've got two issues, two problems. One is they have talked tough for so long, and much of the support that Hezbollah has, or the way it has maintained power, partly in Lebanon, is by talking about how it's going to fight for the Palestinians. Its position that it's going to keep taking on Israel. Iran the same way. So you've got your credibility on the line right now. But at the same time, if they do act, if they initiate something, and they have to fight Israel plus the United States getting involved. I'm not talking about boots on the ground, but cruise missiles and things we've seen the United States do in the past to Syria, for example. That can be a problem. First of all, Hezbollah is in Lebanon. Lebanon is teetering. They are in bad economic shape. If there was some kind of economic shock, you'll have what Israel did in 82, and that is Israel will encourage some of the sectarian groups there, say, this is your chance. We're going to hit Hezbollah. We're going to distract them down here. You guys do what you can up there. And it's kind of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Likewise, over in Syria, Hezbollah has kept Bashar al-Assad propped up through the years that the CIA was backing ISIS against Assad, trying to overthrow the regime there. If you have Hezbollah stuck in a full-fledged fight with Israel, then you've got a likelihood of the factions, al-Nusra Front, Al-Qaeda, the resurgence of ISIS, the Free Syrian Army. You've got all of these factions in Syria that could say, hey, they're distracted, let's go do this. You see this in the history of the world wars. When something's happening over here, and the parties that normally are kind of standing in the way, keeping you from settling a score with your neighbor, but they're now distracted, now's your time to act. So we would see a vast increase in hostilities throughout the Middle East there. During the Syrian conflict, at the height of it, you had Russia doing a lot to keep Assad propped up as well. Remember, Russia went in with fighter jets, and they were taking out a lot of ISIS positions and the militias that were trying to overthrow Assad. But now you've got Russia embroiled in this war with Ukraine. So Iran would have to take on an increased burden in Syria. They would take on an increased burden in maintaining Hezbollah in Lebanon. And so tomorrow, when Nasrallah gives this speech, we'll see. I fully expect him to do what he's done in the past, which is to have very strongly worded remarks, to make threats, to maybe say our red line is this, and if you cross it, we're going to rain down hellfire on you, that kind of thing. Some people think he's going to say, this is it, we're going to war. That's not typically the time at which you would make such an announcement. Yeah, you want to use a surprise attack. So I don't anticipate him doing that, but he is going to talk tough, and we're all going to be talking about it in pundits talking about what does it mean. But it should indicate to us kind of where things are at. Iran has a high degree of influence over Hezbollah, but not total control. So Nasrallah could conceivably decide to just go ahead and act on his own. He could be the kind of person who says, you know what, I understand this is going to be hard on Iran in different ways, but we were formed for this purpose, and now we need to take action, or we're going to lose all legitimacy in the eyes of the the rest of the world that's been looking at us talking about this for so long. So anyway, you've got early on in this, not long after October 7th, when Israel went in and started just massacring the people in Gaza, there were some statements made about, oh, this is it. If you go into Gaza, if you open up a ground operation, that's our red line. We're going to go in. And we can see that so far they've not done it. Let me show you. Let me go to Google Earth here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about just how this could play out, what we see here. First of all, let's just refamiliarize ourselves with the area. You've got Israel, along with the two main parts of the Palestinian territories here. You've got the West Bank, you've got the Gaza Strip. Immediately to the north is Lebanon. To the northeast is Syria, with its capital of Damascus. Over here, we've got this area in orange. This is Syrian territory that is militarily occupied by Israel. It's called the Golan Heights. Syria lost it in 1967. Over here to the east, you've got Jordan, this area here. Over here, you've got Saudi Arabia. You've got Turkey up way to the north, and then Iraq over here. Beyond Iraq, you have Iran. Tehran is the capital up here. So here's the distance. It's about 2,000 kilometers, depending on where you're at in Iran, to Israel. So what Iran has in the area is a bunch of different militias that it has poured money into, support. There are 15 different militias, some much larger than others, that Iran backs. You've got the Houthis down in Yemen, down here. The Houthis control a lot of Yemen. And so you'll hear sometimes about the Houthis firing off missiles toward Israel from here. up here in Iraq, you've got several different militias. You've got the Badr organization, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. Then over, you've also got the Kataib Hezbollah, the Hezbollah brigades. They were founded by a guy named Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. They have killed hundreds of U.S. soldiers in the past, in the, when the U.S. was at the height of its fighting. And they have become part of the actual military of the Iraqi government. They're an independent military arm of the Iraqi government. So, and Muhandis was in charge of it. Now, you may remember that in 2020, Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, who was the guy who was heading the fight against ISIS throughout the whole region, Iraq, Syria, he had traveled to Baghdad, and he was actually meeting with Muhandis, the head of Hezbollah brigades, when Israel provided the logistics to the U.S., the United States, and Trump ordered the assassination. And it killed not only Soleimani, but it also killed Muhandis, who was with him at the time of the strike. So these guys are pissed off. They are ready for revenge. I cannot stress the amount of devotion there is throughout the whole region for Qasem Soleimani. They love him. They adore the man. He fought hard for the people. And so they love him for that. But they also are really upset that Muhandis was assassinated. So you've got the United States, boots on the ground in a handful of different places. Over here, Deir ez-Zor, this whole region up here, basically from the river up to the corner here, oil rich, and the United States controls the oil there. That's really what the USA was after in Syria, was to steal the oil. After we secured control over it, we gradually reduced troop levels. But they still have enough military there to maintain it. And so you've got these militia groups. You may have heard in the news the last couple of weeks, some of them are taking shots at U.S. personnel who are in Syria and who are in Iraq. And that's to be expected. The tactic that Iran uses, they know that they cannot go head to head with the United States militarily. They're powerful, but there's no way that they could, fight off the United States. Not with the technology that we have. But they could meet us face to face on the ground if it was just a straight up, infantry against infantry. But that's just not how it would work. The USA has such vastly superior air power and ballistic missiles superiority that could, we could decimate Iran. So Iran has always prepared for potential conflict with us and with others in the region in a different way of fighting than what we think of when we think of conventional warfare. Iran follows a doctrine called Mukama. Mukama is, well, it's some of the features of it. First of all, peace is not an option. At no time are the forces that are participating in this resistance or the fighting, at no point are they supposed to accept peace agreements, lasting peace. The doctrine of Mukama is to keep things going. Slow, a slow boil, but keep it going. The only time that you can stop fighting is if the enemy gets the upper hand, or if there's certain strategic need, you can reach a hudna, which is a temporary armistice or a temporary ceasefire, but it's limited amount of time. Other than that, you keep fighting, and it's not necessary for there to be a parity between the two nations that may be going at war. Remember that President Nasser of Egypt, years ago, Egypt was the primary foe of Israel in the area. And he kept trying to build up the Egyptian military sufficient that they could have a conventional war against Israel. Bashar al-Assad's father was trying to do the same thing, Hafiz al-Assad. They're trying to build up this strategic parity, build up their forces so that they can fight. But they learned in conflict after conflict, they just can't match Israel in a straight up conventional military fight. Iran knows this. And so the doctrine, the Mukama Doctrine, it employs asymmetrical warfare through proxies. The goal is not to secure a certain territory. So you won't see Iran, for example, come over here and try and liberate Gaza and then hold it. That's not how you do it, because that would require the kind of conventional military that over there that they don't have. So what you do is you methodically erode the enemy's resolve. You bring them to their knees through persistent, ongoing degradation of their forces. You keep it going and you don't relent. Now, another thing about this doctrine is it's not about national, it's not a national struggle. It's not a national movement. So it's not like the Egyptians versus Israel. It's not the Iraqis versus Israel or the Syrians versus Israel. It's not even Iranians against Israel. This doctrine kind of redefines it. We think here in the United States as it's the USA against whomever, the USA against these guys. We don't really think about, oh, this is a movement of Christianity against the other party, where any Christians anywhere in the world are part of our crusade or whatever. But the jihad that typifies this Mukama doctrine is it's not national. So that's why you have militias all throughout the Middle East, all of these different proxies who are doing the same thing. It's not about Iraq or Syria. It's not even about the Palestinians alone trying to liberate Palestine. It is relentlessly fighting against a superior foe, talking about the United States, and wearing them down. Just keep going and going and going until something happens. Now, I'm reminded of, if you ever want to read something very interesting, and gee whiz, how can I say this that won't get me in trouble? As an open-minded person, I like to look at all sides of a story. And after 9/11, like everybody else in the United States, I was furious. I was angry. I wanted to see, somebody pay. But one thing that I did do was I actually read what Osama bin Laden wrote. What was this intifada about? What pissed them off? And he had written a kind of a religious decree, a religious-based decree called a fatwa back in 1995. And he explained in very clear language why they were now attacking the United States. Not 9/11, but I'm talking about attacks all over wherever they were. the attack on the USS Cole and so forth, attack on U.S. embassies. And one of the things that he said in that fatwa is that it was clear that the United States did not have the resolve to stay in a conflict if sufficient blood is shed. That the American people, as long as they're safe, as long as the troops are, able to not have vast numbers of casualties, the American people will largely stay silent, not get involved, not try and stop the political class or the military industrial complex. But if you have enough carnage, enough soldiers coming home in flag draped coffins, then the people will stand up and say, enough of this. Why are we even over there? What are we doing? Get us out of there. So there's a lack of resolve to stick with something if there are enough casualties, at least unless it's, if we're facing an existential threat, if Russia was over here bombing the homeland, the United States, that'd be different. But all of these other areas that we're fighting, a precedent was set with Vietnam, where the people stood up and really said, we're not going to do this crap again. And so after Vietnam, the next big conflict was the Gulf War. And they were so careful. The politicians, George H.W. Bush and his neocons, were very careful, first of all, on how they framed it, in the propaganda they used to show, we've absolutely got to do this to save all of the, the babies in Kuwait. And they got in and out. And while a lot of soldiers did suffer Gulf War syndrome and problems like that, there was relatively few casualties, fatalities on the part of the Americans. And so, we don't look back and see the Gulf War the way that we look at, say, Vietnam, because there weren't as many body bags. Someone in the chat mentioned, where did I see it? Oh yeah, SJR says, do they show the coffins anymore? Didn't Trump end that? That was actually ended. Trump did it, but they were already changing that beforehand. Back during the subsequent Iraq War, not the Gulf War, but the 2003 Iraq War, they actually took mainstream media like Fox News and representatives from all of the mainstream corporate media and embedded them along with the U.S. forces so that they could produce propaganda videos to send back and rah, look at how great we are and everything else. But bin Laden also talked about Somalia, about how, we had, we're over there causing all kinds of trouble. But then as soon as a couple U.S. soldiers were killed, the whole Black Hawk Down incident, and a couple of U.S. soldiers were stripped naked and being dragged around by ropes, their corpses being pulled through the streets. Clinton he was like, let's get out of here. And so bin Laden was making that point that they don't think that the United States has the kind of resolve, while at the same time you've got his ilk, the extremists, the Islamists, they are willing to deal with far more casualties and fatalities and keep going. And so Mukama Doctrine includes that. A lot of death is acceptable because there is also a religious component to it where, they believe in martyrdom. And so if you die in the course of fighting the great Satan, so be it. That's an acceptable outcome. Plus, they have the experience of it. Back when the United States backed Iraq against Iran in the 8-year war in the 1980s, there were over 1 million people that were killed. So they're used to immense numbers of deaths. and it changed the psychology, or it influenced the psychology of the people. So we've got, we come down to the question of Iran versus Israel. All right, fine. Iran doesn't want a direct fight with the United States. They're going to keep using proxies to attack U.S. interests, U.S. forces, U.S. bases, U.S. assets that are spread out throughout the region, the Levant and beyond. Fine. But what about Israel? Will Iran and Israel end up in a head-to-head battle? To consider that, there's a couple of things we need to look at. I just glanced over somebody saying, "Did you block me?" I don't know who you are, but 18 wheels. You don't look blocked to me. I don't even know who you are. I certainly didn't block you. Iran versus Israel. When you look at the potential for warfare, conventional war, you've got to look at three main things. You've got to look at the question of the size of the forces involved. You've got to look at the tactical proficiency of the two sides, and you have to look at the weaponry possessed by both sides. So starting with the navies, Iran versus Israel, neither one has any significant navy. Iran has about 19 submarines. Israel's got 5 submarines. So yeah, Iran could send subs over to the Mediterranean there off the coast of Israel, and try and hit some of the either U.S. vessels over there, or try and send out some missiles against Israel. But neither side has a substantial navy, so we can set that aside because that would not be a determining factor one way or another. Ground army. Iran has 1 million people, 1 million troops in its army. Israel has a maximum of 600,000. So just by the sheer number of the forces, Iran right off the bat has 400,000 more fighters than Israel does. But then we have to look at the depth. Fine, well, Israel can just mobilize more. Well, not really. Not a whole lot more. Remember, Israel has a mandatory service. Every single person who turns, well, almost every single person who turns 18 has to serve 2 years to 2 years and 9 months in the Israeli military. So a large portion of the Israeli military is their kids, they're teenagers. They and they're soft. I saw them when I was over there. These are not tough guys. And maybe our troops have put on weight too, but I mean, most of the IDF that I saw, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they're not physically fit. But anyway, beyond that, Israel's only got a population of 9 million people. Iran has 77 million people. So in addition to having 400,000 more troops, they have got a depth that they can pull from, and they're not going to have to twist arms. The Iranian people, even right now, they're going around doing these mock recruitments, offering to go fight on behalf of the Palestinians. There's a big difference in a fighting force that truly deeply feels righteous and on the right side in a fight. Israel, for all its talk, and there is outrage because of the killings that happened on October 7th, but Israel knows that it has been on the wrong side for a long time. They can tell themselves all they want that the apartheid is justified, that the constant abuse of the Palestinian civilians is okay. The mass incarceration of Palestinian children and young men whose only crime is that they're Palestinian. That's not the kind of thing. Knowing this, that's not the kind of thing that's going to really make the people want to get in there and fight for that. So, setting aside the troops, Iran has got 4,000 tanks to Israel's 2,000 tanks, around 2,200. Iran's using older tanks. Most of them that they have are upgraded Soviet era T-72s. They're okay, but compared to Israel's tanks, even though Iran has twice as many, Israel has got these high-tech Merkava tanks that are a lot very much superior. Armored personnel, armored vehicles. Iran's got 8,500. Israel has 7,000, so around the same amount. Iran has significantly more artillery, though, and they've got a whole lot of multiple rocket launch systems. The problem with all of this, though, that I've been saying about the ground forces, the tanks, the armored vehicles, the artillery reaches 70 to 80 kilometers max. The problem with all of this is that what good is all of this if you can't get the forces and the equipment to the destination? And that's where there's a problem for Iran in a head-to-head matchup. Because Iran would have to, if they wanted to go and mobilize the army and go attack Israel, they would either have to go north through Turkey and then down, or they'd have to cross through Iraq, or by some chance, maybe they could leave through the Persian Gulf and cross up through the Red Sea and enter from the south. But that's unlikely. They'd have a lot of land to cover, over 1,000 kilometers that they would have to cover. And in that time, that gives Israel a chance to hit them on the way over. And while the ground forces of Iran are vastly superior, the air power of Israel is better than the air power of Iran. Iran's got about 160 aircraft. Mostly their fighting jets are F-14 Tomcats. They're fast. They're very agile. But Israel has got 241 aircraft to Iran's 160. And these aircraft are greatly superior. They've got Israeli F-35Is. They can achieve air superiority. They have advanced targeting. They can carry out long-range attacks. They've got defensive stealth tech. And so when it comes to air power, Israel does have a distinct advantage, and it would be very hard for Iran to move on the ground, because it's slow moving, to get its military in place. To deal with that as an alternative, what Iran has that is much superior to Israel is they have an arsenal of long-range ballistic missiles that is the real problem for Israel. That's the thing that Israel truly has to worry about. Israel really doesn't have to worry about Iran traveling over. At least they wouldn't unless the fight had been going on for a long time and enough of Israel's fighter jets had been taken out. Otherwise, what you have to do is use the ballistic missiles. Iran has got 5 different types of long-range ballistic missiles that they can fire from inside Iran. They don't even have to have forward deployment. They can hit Israel from Iran. They've got Shahab 3s. These things, they carry warheads. In case you don't know, a ballistic missile is different from a rocket. Hamas uses rockets, unguided rockets. Rockets, they stay in one piece, they go up and come back down. What a ballistic missile does is it's a booster that has a warhead on the top that detaches. And so these Shahab 3s can carry 1,000 kilogram warheads. They've also got, in addition to those Shahabs, they've got Kormashars, types 1, 2, and 4. They travel 3,000 kilometers. So when it comes to these long-range missiles, Iran could do major damage to Israel, mass casualties. Iron Dome can only do so much. If you have, for example, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, all of them simultaneously overwhelming the Iron Dome systems so that Iran can then fire off these ballistic missiles, it would just wipe out Tel Aviv. It would be big. It would be huge. So Iran, in my opinion, because they have really set up a defensive military, their doctrine, their way of doing things is largely defensive. Iran has not initiated a war against another country in over a century. They just haven't. They're not a nation of conquest. They're not out to go attack people, but they're very defensive in nature. So it's unlikely that Iran would instigate a major attack on Israel unless Israel did one of two things. Either Israel attacks Iran, tries to take out some Iranian in the midst of all of this. If they fly over there and try and take out Iranian nuclear facilities, nuclear reactors, that could provoke Iran. Or if Israel goes to war with Hezbollah and is going to do major damage to Hezbollah, even if Hezbollah was to fight to a standstill, or even if they won, they would suffer huge losses. And it would take Iran a decade probably to build Hezbollah back up to this kind of gem that it is today in the eyes of Iran. And like I said earlier, if Hezbollah got into a big fight, then that threatens things for Iran's control and influence all over the Middle East there, Syria, Iraq. So anyway, this is why I think that Hezbollah has been very slow to escalate. If Hezbollah dramatically escalates, and I don't mean, some attack, with Nasrallah getting ready to give this speech, I would think that he's not going to get out there and give some speech and say strong things and them not take some action to go along with it. So I'm not saying that I don't think Hezbollah will take some actions, but I think that there's a level at which they are willing to go, but not go farther than what they think Israel would tolerate. Tit for tat, back and forth. But if Israel does go at, Blinken is on his way back to Israel. Secretary of State Blinken has been dispatched back to Israel because the Biden administration, as awful as Biden has been with his verbal support and turning a blind eye to what Israel is doing, it would really hurt Biden politically, dramatically, for war to break out, because his own party does not want war with Iran. The Republicans probably wouldn't care. The Trumpers and others would love it. The Christian evangelicals, the evangelical Zionists would love to see a war on Iran. But the Democrats are not committed. The Democrats want to see the slaughter against Russians. That's where their bloodlust is they want to see as many Russians killed as possible. Um, but it's primarily the Republicans, the conservatives, that want to see the war against Iran. So anyway, will it happen? Who can say? Yeah, Lindsey Graham would definitely love it. It just really depends on what happens. Another factor, something I didn't mention earlier, Iran, the way that Iran has set up its military, its command structure, is it has given across Iran, I think there's 31 command centers that have been set up in Iran, where the local commanders have a much greater degree of decision-making authority than you would have, say, in the US military. These commanders have the authority to take actions, even dramatic actions, based on what's happening in their area. And the reason that they do this, the reason Iran has done this, is anticipating a problem like US cruise missile strikes or something against primary targets, taking out key figures in the Iranian military. It's not going to decapitate the serpent. This is kind of a Hydra type setup. You can't take out one. But the problem is that with the increased authority that these commanders have in their areas, there is a greater risk that one of them could perceive some event or some attack and respond in kind, or even worse, in a way that could provoke or give justification to Israel to take greater actions. So there is that risk. But there's no doubt, if full-scale war were to break out between Israel and Iran, all hell will break loose. Everybody's going to want to get their licks in. Things will go nuts in Syria. Things will go nuts in Lebanon. I doubt the Egyptians would do much of anything. The Saudis are wimps. That's why they've got the United States military in Saudi Arabia constantly to provide protection for them, so that the royal family doesn't get deposed. The Saudis are terrified of an Arab Spring type situation where the people rise up and do against them what has been seen in other parts of the Muslim world. Like in Syria with people rising up against Assad. So the Saudis are I think they're going to be the last people, the last ones to do much of anything. I just don't think. I think that Mohammed bin Salman has got so much invested in his own plans to develop Jeddah as the new, financial center of that part of the world, that he wants to keep relations good enough with Israel, because Israel will be key. But at the same time, he's got to say some stuff. You lose face with your people if you don't at least talk tough and do some token things, like maybe pull your envoy back and kick out the Israeli ambassador. Now that's not the case there, because they don't have diplomatic relations that way with Israel. That Bahrain does. Bahrain, at least the rumor, I don't know if they actually fulfilled it, but the rumor earlier today is that Bahrain kicked out the Israeli ambassador. I don't know if that was actually done. So these are ugly times. But if you like this kind of stuff, if you want to stay informed, then watch for the news tomorrow to see what the head of Hezbollah says. And I'll probably do a video of some sort about it after the fact, review it. And also, if you like this stuff, here's how you can chip in. I don't know what it is about this buy me a coffee thing that people have enjoyed more than making donations through PayPal or signing up on Patreon. I would love for people to sign up on Patreon. Um, and donations by PayPal are great. But someone a couple of days ago recommended that I sign up an account for Buy Me a Coffee, which actually I hadn't heard of before. But Buy Me a Coffee / Blackstone Intel, and a lot of people have donated through it. A couple very generously. So because I cannot get super chats, and because I don't get a penny from any kind of advertising, and because all day long I've been doing nothing but this, doing interviews and working on this, I've not done any work in my real, my other jobs that I have, the other businesses that I've run. So I would appreciate it if a few of you would chip in a couple dollars. You can do it at paypal.me/blackstoneintel. But buymeacoffee.com/blackstoneintel. Somebody could throw that in there. Matt McGregor asks, you can't get super chats? No, I haven't gotten, YouTube demonetized me about 4 years ago. I think about 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I haven't made anything ever since then. At least not. The only income that I derive are direct donations. And so that's why I ask for donations in every show, because otherwise I make no income at all, no advertising revenue, nothing. And the other thing that makes it hard is because my videos are now, when they demonetized the channel, they also blacklisted it where very few people see it. It doesn't go into the feeds of all of my subscribers. And so there's a smaller number of people that hear me, with my hat in hand begging for a couple dollars. Someone asked about Cash App. It's $Blackstone Intel. Also, someone asked for my P.O. Box. It's down at the bottom. P.O. Box 1333, Kernersville, North Carolina, 27285. I will read every letter that you guys send. And most of the time I respond with a short message back, a postcard or something. I do enjoy getting letters. And speaking of which, I thanked someone who sent me a donation recently to my P.O. box, but let's see. And just say thanks again to Galen H. I won't say the last name in case he doesn't want it. But thank you very much for that. And several of you, I see your names, and you make donations, and I appreciate all of it. Donations in Bitcoin, yeah, I could, after the show, I can add my Bitcoin address. I haven't gotten a Bitcoin donation in years, but I'll add that back in. I'll put that in the feed later on. I don't have it at my fingertips right now. Got you, bro. Been a follower of yours since high school. I'm 28 now. Marcus Fresh. Hey, thank you. That's awesome. I love to hear from people that have been around for a while. Let's see. What else here? I'm just reading through some of the messages. Hey, wire link. What do we want? Likes when we hit the like button now. Thank you. All right. What else? Anything you guys want me to chat about here before I wrap things up? Looks like we're at about an hour, 11 minutes. I've got some more interviews lined up. One of my next ones is going to be with Mike Adams, the health ranger. We'll be talking about the Palestinian issue. That one will be next week. I've got a couple other small ones between now and then. Yeah, I've been dieting. I've been doing a bunch of 5Ks. I'm not fast, but I'll keep going. Yeah, Truth Seeker asked, "Did you ever finish your home renovations?" I basically it was just I renovated my living room. Yeah, that was like that was a while back. That was like 5 years ago. Yeah, I tore out the flooring and put some tile down and repainted everything, fixed it up. The dogs and kids had messed it up. The carpet was all old, and so it was way overdue, needing an update. Was the Barbie movie good? Matt asks. Well, I actually went and saw it, and I thought it was pretty atrocious myself. I go to a lot of movies. That movies are one of my ways of de-stressing. I've enjoyed cinema since I was a little kid. Angel Vandegrift Park. Jake, can you speak about the rumors that Hamas is using hospitals for their command centers using human shields? Angel, are you the one someone asked me that? I saw somewhere, either in a comment or something, and I know I never got to it. The answer is no. Hamas is not using hospitals as hideouts. The hospital personnel at Al Shifa, for example, flat rejected. I mean, doctor after doctor after doctor, personnel there say absolutely not. There was, I think, in 2008, I think there were some allegations back then that were investigated as part of an overall UN investigation after the Operation Cast Lead. And I think that they said that there had been some Hamas militants that had gone into a hospital or something like that. The way that Israel is able to make the claim that Hamas is in these hospitals is there's a different. Think back to the Trump administration. You've got Donald Trump and his cabinet members and the officials in his government, right, in his administration. They're Republicans. Then you've got the general body of the public, where roughly 40-something% of the public are registered Republicans. So if we were if, say, for example, the Trump administration was declared to be a terrorist group or something, if you have Republicans who are not in the administration going into a hospital, then you could say, if you were propagandists from the other side, you could say, hey, Republicans are hiding out. And give the impression that the Trump officials are the ones who are in the hospital. And that's not the case. Hamas is not just, they have a militant wing. They have a wing that is, it's all about fighting. But that's one wing. Hamas started in the 1970s as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. And basically, all they did throughout the 70s and early 80s is they talked about religion. They studied the Quran. They encouraged, it was kind of like a religious movement to try and encourage people to live according to religious doctrine, Islamic law. It wasn't until Israel started pouring money into Hamas through the mosques that Hamas started growing in power. As it grew in power, they became they did a couple different things. For one thing, they started using more and more money to help with social issues because of the poverty there, primarily in Gaza, where they were based. But they also uh, became a political party, and they got deep into politics. And so Hamas is a political party in addition to everything else. So are Hamas members in Gaza in the hospitals? Absolutely. But that'd be like saying average Republicans are in the hospital. That does not mean that Hamas leadership, that the politicians are hiding out in the hospitals. It doesn't mean that uh, uh, Al Qassam brigades, the militant wing of Hamas, are in the hospitals, carrying their guns and everything around. So it's easy to make up the propaganda. Matt asked, didn't Israel fund Hamas? Yeah, absolutely. They funded Hamas. No question. And we know this it's not a conspiracy theory. I've talked about this a little bit recently. Israel did the same thing with Hamas that the United States CIA did with Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. Hamas, uh, they didn't start out as a militant organization. They weren't all about physical confrontation with Israel. They were, they're religious people. But over time, as the Palestinians, especially the Gazans, started losing confidence in the ability of the ruling political party, which was Fatah, the party of Yasser Arafat, as they started to see, they're not making progress here for us. We are not getting any closer to independence. Restrictions on us aren't getting any better. And especially when they saw Arafat, who, although he had spent decades leading armed resistance against the Israeli occupation, eventually he gets in the 90s. He looks to a lot of people like he's going soft because he's participating in the Oslo Accords, and he abandons the position that Israel needed to be destroyed, because that used to be the official position of the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization in general, but the Fatah party specifically. He backed away from that in exchange for a token amount of authority that was given through the creation of the Palestinian Authority. But people see this and they're like, we don't like this. And so they're turning away from Fatah and toward the more rambunctious party, the ones that are taking a strong stand, saying, no, we don't believe in Israel's right to exist. They came and they took all our lands and established this state, and they don't have a moral right to be here. So we want the end of the Jewish state, and for all of the land to be Palestine. And Hamas was promoting that. And it was attractive to a lot of the people. And so Hamas grew more and more because they were also doing a whole lot for the people, trying to help people with food and money and different things. But the thing was that the money was coming from, a lot of it was coming from Israel. I have mentioned in another stream I did with you guys that the Israeli military governor, who used to be over Gaza, his area of control was Gaza, Brigadier General Yitzhak Segev. He gave an interview to the New York Times, and he said very clearly that the government of Israel would give him money to distribute to Hamas, but he would funnel it through the mosques, and the mosques would do all this stuff for the people, but Hamas was using the money and getting a good name. So Israel was literally trying to build Hamas up as a counterweight to Fatah. Fatah was actually secular. Fatah was not an Islamist party. They were not pushing religion. They're Christians Christian politicians in the Palestinian Fatah party. So Israel is building up Hamas, pouring money into them secretly. It's not like the Israeli people knew this was happening. But there have been several officials to come out and talk about this. Yasser Arafat himself said that Hamas was a creature created by Israel. So in the 1990s, we see Hamas mutating from just a religious group into a more militant faction with both political power and with the ability to fight, and a will, partly because of religious belief, a will to sacrifice their own lives for the cause of this Palestinian freedom. So that's when we saw the rise of tactics like suicide bombing, because the people were willing to die because of the belief of, the reward they would get in the hereafter. And so Israel had short-term success. It was a spectacular success in the beginning, because Arafat was making progress. The world was looking at the situation, and they were saying, we really got to finally resolve this Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And the only way that's going to happen is for the Palestinians to have their own sovereign state that is not under occupation by Israel. And there was a lot of movement in that direction, or at least more movement than there had ever been before. And Israel, their left-wingers, which were the minority, but they had dominance for a while in Israeli politics, those pushing for peace with the Palestinians, and that alarmed the right-wingers. And there's a lot more right-wingers in Israel and in the government now than there are the peacemakers. And so they are the ones who really started saying, we have got to counter Arafat. The PLO has to be fractured. The movement toward Palestinian independence has to be stopped somehow. And so what they did was they built up Hamas, which had a very different way of looking at with things. And so much so that Hamas in 2006, they won control in the Palestinian elections. They, not just over Gaza, they received a majority of votes throughout all of the Palestinian territories there. And that allowed them to determine control of the Palestinian government. Now, that was perfect for Israel and for the United States in a way, because Hamas had their position was, we want an end of Israel. Israel does not have a right to exist. Well, now the Israeli government does not have to negotiate with Hamas, with the Palestinians at all, because Hamas is in charge. And so Israel could then, they had justification in the eyes of the world, or at least they thought they did, to say, see there, how can you expect us to negotiate on these difficult issues with a party that wants to see our nation eradicated? And so they were successful in that. But, when you create a Frankenstein monster, it often will turn against you, and that's what happened. And so you've got Fatah and Hamas. They ended up in a civil war, 2006, 2007 civil war. And the United States and the Israeli government both said they refused to work with Hamas, and by extension, the Palestinian government. And then because of the Fatah party led by Mahmoud Abbas, who's the current head of the party, who's a total loser, but he Fatah and Hamas went to war. They came to blows, and in the process, it split the movement. It led to Hamas seizing control of Gaza, taking full control of Gaza, and it split the West Bank and Gaza politically. And so now they've been at this standstill for years, not making any progress. And in that time, Israel has been able to keep chipping away at the territory, building more and more settlements, which are all illegal under international law. It's against U.S. foreign policy. And yeah, the Palestinians are stuck there. Really, the Palestinians, the problem is they have to overthrow their own government. Elections have been suspended for years. They can't get rid of a boss who is basically just I don't want to say he's a henchman for Israel, but he is one who doesn't want to rock the boat, and he does basically provide security for Israel, keeping the Palestinian resistance quelled. In fact, since October 7th, as Palestinians in the West Bank went out protesting, Abbas's administration sent the police out after him, actually killed a few of the Palestinian protesters. So Abbas is a major impediment to Palestinian progress. So I understand. I don't agree with Hamas's tactics, going after civilians. I definitely don't agree with it. But I understand the frustration that the people are experiencing because they tried peace and it got them basically nowhere. They've turned to Hamas, which is more militant, and they've gotten nowhere. So what are they going to do? Who's going to stand up for them? And that's why they welcome any support from the outside world, whether it's from Iran or Hezbollah or anyone else, because they feel very isolated, very alone. So anyway, yeah, Bruce says, what a mess for the Palestinian civilians. That's it. All right. I don't know what else to chat about here. Let me see if there's any. Let's see. GDNPB in October 2012, Kissinger said there will be no Israel in 10 years with no unless they do or any other way around that statement. I'm not quite sure what the statement is. I've not heard anything from Kissinger suggesting there would be no Israel in 10 years. I don't know that he said that, but if he did, he's obviously wrong. 10 years has passed. Israel's not going anywhere. Israel could end up having major strife. They could have problems and they could collapse economically under certain conditions. The Federal Reserve is going to help to keep them afloat, but they could experience a major contraction. But I don't see Israel ever going away. I think it's just a fact of life. And even Hamas at a certain point indicated that even though they weren't going to come right out and say it, they acknowledged that Israel is not going to go anywhere. A lot of the rhetoric about getting rid of Israel, it's just lip service. It's just, rah, 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 saying, talking tough. Hamas knows that Israel isn't gonna disappear. And they could move Israel to Western Ukraine. Yeah, they actually would fit in there quite well, given the kind of fascist mentality of the Western Ukrainians over there near Poland. But anyway, Amnon says, I live on the Green Line in Jerusalem. As you go into the rolling hills of the Judean mountains, and yes, settlements have gotten closer and closer to us. Yeah, I saw them when I was over there, all over the place. Those settlements are everywhere and expanding. Rose White says, America defends profits, not people. That's the truth. I don't know if you guys saw this thing from Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the other day. I showed it to my wife. This news clip, one of the first interviews he's done in in a good while. And he came right out and said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, you need to understand what's going on. Providing weapons to Ukraine and Israel is revitalizing our industrial sector. So in 38 states where weapons are being built, Americans are making money, talking about Ukraine, weapons going to Ukraine. And he said, so what we're doing, and this is true, what America is doing is, as the military industrial complex builds new weapons, and they're constantly building new weapons, what we do is we say we allocate a certain amount of money to Ukraine. We're doing I think it's like $250 million a month for Ukraine, which is that's gone down from what it used to be. But we take the money and we buy, here in America, we buy new weapons, the latest weapons. We take those weapons from the war industry and we fill up our coffers, fill up our arsenals. Then we take the older weapons and we send those over to Ukraine. And so Mitch McConnell was talking about this. What a great thing. It's built, it keeps us way up here militarily. And then he made the point that plus Ukraine is using these weapons to fight the Russians, who are our enemies. So we're degrading their military, which is kind of a funny way of just saying we're killing Russians with US made weapons. And he said, I don't see a problem with this. I don't see where the problem is. Unbelievable. Well, I'll tell you where the problem is. The problem is people are dying in huge numbers. And even the people who, and it's not just the military, civilians are dying on both sides. Civilians in the Donbass, some civilians in what's left of Ukraine. But the misery, the heartache, the psychological trauma, what a freaking psychopath this guy is. But that's the attitude. That's the attitude of a whole lot of our politicians. Just like she said a minute ago, it's about profit. Stephen says, why hasn't Gaza had any new elections since 2006? Well, they don't need to in Gaza. I mean, you've got the ruling party there, Hamas. They rule with there is no opposition. There's really no opposition parties in Gaza. It's Hamas. Gaza is a different situation than the West Bank. But anyway. Yeah. A lot of people, if people say this in the comments after the live stream's over and it goes to where there's no longer YouTube chat, but then people just post regular comments. A lot of comments, even ones that are totally innocent, YouTube's filters grab a lot of comments and hold them for review. And I could go through manually and approve all of these comments if I took the time to do it. But I don't have the time. I could do that, but it would take, I mean, I get hundreds of comments a day on my videos. It would take me hours a day to read every single comment and that gets held back and review it. So sometimes people say, oh, you're censoring comments. I don't have the time. I'm not censoring comments. No, if I see something that's repugnant, if I see somebody like, oh yeah, there's Palestinians deserve whatever, yeah, I'll delete it if I see it. And I make no apologies for that. You don't get to come in and act disgraceful. Act like a jackass, and I'll delete your stuff. But if you're just making regular comments or even expressing dissent from what I'm saying, that's fine. I'm not offended by that, as long as it's respectful. But anyway, Give me a second here. Thank you to Nasser, who in the last hour signed up on Patreon. Thank you so much, Nasser. I appreciate that. And let me check this buy me a coffee thing. See if anybody made a pseudo super chat. Yes. Oh, Hasan did that. And also I don't know the name, but YouTube/Patreon subscriber. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Very cool. Thank you guys. And earlier today, about 4 hours ago, Neil B, and then an anonymous person also donated. Thank you guys. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. And I'm going to try to, tomorrow's Friday. I should be able to do either a live stream or just another video tomorrow. And if any, I haven't checked PayPal. If anyone made a donation there, I apologize. I haven't looked over there yet. It takes me a minute to log in there. KNG just arrived. Are things including? Unfortunately so, but here in a few minutes, the live stream will be available where you can go back and watch it from the beginning. Thank you to all of you. There's probably a few of you who have made a donation that I didn't see. And so if I'm not acknowledging you, please forgive my oversight. Not intentional. I do appreciate your support. All right, everybody, have a good evening, and I will. Can we finish with that song? What song? I don't know what you're talking about. All right, yeah, sorry, no making fun of people like that. All right, talk with you guys later.